I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. That's the part that still messes with my head. If I hadn't forgotten my charger that night, none of this would have happened. I would have just gone to bed, woken up the next morning, and Henry would still be just Henry, my best friend, my roommate, the guy I thought I understood better than anyone. But instead, I stood there in the dark hallway, frozen, listening to him say something that made my entire world tilt. It was around 1 a.m. when I got back to the apartment. The city was quiet in that weird, late-night way where everything feels paused, like even time is tired. I'd stayed late at the library trying to catch up on work I'd been putting off all week. Classic me. All I wanted was to crash, maybe scroll on my phone for 10 minutes, then pass out. Except my phone was dead. And my charger? Of course, I'd left it in the living room. So I dropped my bag quietly by the door and walked down the hallway, not even turning on the lights. Henry usually stayed up late anyway, gaming or watching something dumb on his laptop. I figured I'd just grab the charger and maybe mess with him for still being awake. But as I got closer, I heard his voice. Low, not laughing, not relaxed, serious. I slowed down. I don't think I can keep pretending anymore. I stopped walking. Something about the way he said it wasn't casual. It wasn't like when he joked about hating his classes or complaining about people. This was different, tense, careful, like every word mattered. I leaned slightly toward the wall, heart picking up for no real reason yet. Yeah, I know how it sounds, he continued, quieter now. But it's not just a phase. It hasn't been for a while. There was a pause. I couldn't hear the other person. He had headphones in. Then he sighed. And I swear, I'd never heard Henry sound like that before. Vulnerable. I live with him, okay? Every day. Do you have any idea what that's like? My stomach tightened. Him. There were only two people Henry lived with, and one of them was me. I didn't move. I barely breathed. No, he doesn't know, he said quickly. And I'm not planning to tell him. That would just ruin everything. Something in my chest dropped. Hard. Ruin everything? My mind started racing, trying to make sense of it, trying to twist his words into something that didn't mean what I thought they meant. But then he said my name. Easton would freak out if he knew. I felt it like a physical hit. Everything went quiet in my head, except that one sentence echoing over and over again. Easton would freak out. I gripped the edge of the wall, fingers pressing into the paint. Yeah, he continued, softer now. I mean, he's not like that. I don't know. He's just him. There was something in his voice when he said that, something I couldn't quite place. Not just frustration, not just fear, something warmer, and that made it worse. I'm trying to ignore it, Henry went on. I really am, but it's getting harder. Another pause, then quieter than before. Because I think I'm in love with him. I don't remember deciding to step back. I don't remember turning around. But suddenly I was back in my room, door closed, leaning against it like I'd just run a mile. My heart was pounding so loud it felt ridiculous, like it was trying to get my attention, like I hadn't heard enough already. Henry was in love with me. The words didn't feel real. They didn't fit into the version of reality I'd been living in for the past year. Henry, who I'd met on the first day of college when he'd made some dumb joke about my shoes. Henry, who'd become my closest friend without me even realizing it. Henry, who I'd shared late-night talks with, stupid inside jokes, takeout dinners, random drives at 2 a.m. Henry, in love with me. I dragged a hand over my face, pacing the small space of my room. No, I muttered under my breath. No, there's no way. But there was. I'd heard it, clear as day. And the worst part? Now that the idea was in my head, things started clicking into place. The way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The way he always sat a little too close on the couch. The way his voice softened when it was just the two of us. I'd noticed all of it before. I just never let myself think about why. Because thinking about it would have meant questioning something I wasn't ready to question. But now I didn't have a choice. I sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. My chest felt tight. Not panicked. Not exactly. Just full. Confused. Overloaded. because I didn't know what I was supposed to do with this. Pretend I hadn't heard it? Act normal? Look him in the eye tomorrow morning like nothing had changed? The thought alone made my stomach twist. And then another thought hit me. Sharp, uncomfortable, impossible to ignore. What if things had already changed? I swallowed hard, because if I was being honest, really honest, there had always been something there. Something I never fully examined. Something I never let myself name. And now I was terrified to find out what it actually was. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute, because every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice again. I think I'm in love with him. And for the first time, I couldn't tell if that scared me, or if it scared me how much it didn't. I wish I could say I handled it like a normal person the next morning. I didn't. I woke up before my alarm. Even though I hadn't really slept, my eyes burned, my head felt heavy, and for a few seconds, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, hoping stupidly that maybe I'd imagined everything, that it had been some weird half-dream. But then I heard movement in the kitchen, and it all came rushing back. Henry. His voice. I think I'm in love with him. My chest tightened instantly. Great, I muttered, dragging a hand over my face. Perfect. I sat up slowly, trying to gather myself, trying to act like a functioning human being. The problem was I didn't know what normal even looked like anymore, because nothing felt normal. Not my thoughts, not the way my stomach kept twisting, not the fact that I was suddenly hyper-aware of him. I got dressed, took a breath, and stepped out into the hallway. And there he was, standing in the kitchen like nothing had changed, like he hadn't just casually destroyed my entire sense of reality a few hours ago. Morning, Henry said, glancing up from the coffee machine. His voice was the same, easy, calm, familiar, and that somehow made it worse. Yeah, morning, I replied, forcing my tone to stay even as I walked in. Don't look at him too much. Don't act weird. Don't overthink it. I grabbed a mug just to have something to do with my hands. Henry leaned against the counter, watching the coffee drip. You're up early, he said. Thought you had a late class today. I do, I said quickly. Just couldn't sleep. Not technically a lie. He nodded like that made sense. Same, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. Stayed up too late. My heart skipped. Stayed up too late. Yeah, I bet you did. I focused on pouring coffee, trying not to let my thoughts spiral again. But then, you okay? I froze for half a second. Yeah, I said, maybe a little too fast. Henry frowned slightly, pushing himself off the counter. You seem off. Of course I do. I just found out you're in love with me. But instead I shrugged. Just tired. He didn't look convinced. And for a second, just a second, his eyes lingered on me in a way that made my chest feel tight again, like he was trying to read something beneath the surface. I looked away first. Big mistake, because now I was aware of everything. The way he was standing a little too close, the quiet tension in the air, the fact that if I just turned my head slightly, I'd be looking right at him. And suddenly, all those little moments from before didn't feel so innocent anymore. They felt loaded. Like they meant something. Hey, Henry said, softer now. I forced myself to look at him. What? He hesitated. And that alone was enough to make my pulse pick up. Henry didn't hesitate. Not usually. But now he looked unsure. Like he was debating something. It's nothing, he said finally, shaking his head. A pause. Then, with a small smirk, you just look like you saw a ghost. I let out a quiet breath, almost laughing despite everything. If I did, I'd be more dramatic about it. Good, he said, because I don't feel like dealing with that this early. And just like that, the moment broke. Or at least it should have. But the tension didn't go away. It just shifted. The rest of the day was a mess. I tried to go to class, tried to focus, tried to act like my brain wasn't replaying the same conversation over and over again. It didn't work. At all. Every time I thought I'd distracted myself, something pulled me right back. A memory, a look, a random detail I'd ignored before that suddenly felt important. By the time I got back to the apartment, I felt like I'd been running in circles inside my own head. And the worst part? I still hadn't decided what I was going to do, because I had options. None of them felt right. I could pretend I didn't hear anything. Just ignore it. Keep things the way they were. Or I could say something, confront him, ask him directly. The idea alone made my stomach twist. Because if I did that, there was no going back. No pretending. No normal. Everything would change. And I didn't know if I was ready for that. When I walked in, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. "Henry," I called out, dropping my bag by the door. No answer. I frowned, stepping further inside. Maybe he went out. Good. I needed time to think anyway. But as I passed by his room, I heard something. His voice. Low again. My steps slowed. Not again. I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. But before I could stop myself, I found myself standing there, listening. "I almost told him today," Henry was saying. My chest tightened instantly. "Told me?" "Yeah, I know," he continued, pacing. I could hear it in his voice. "It's stupid. He was right there, and I thought." A pause. Then a quiet exhale. "I don't think I can keep this to myself much longer." My heart started pounding again. Louder this time. Because this wasn't just something he was dealing with privately anymore. He was getting closer to saying it. To me. And I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that conversation. I wasn't ready to hear him say those words directly. Because overhearing it was one thing. But hearing it from him, looking him in the eyes while he said it, that was something else entirely. "I just don't want to lose him," Henry said quietly. And that hit harder than anything else. I'd rather keep pretending than mess everything up. I swallowed hard, stepping back before I could hear more. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about what I'd heard. It was about him, about what this was costing him. And for the first time since last night, I felt something shift inside me, something I couldn't ignore anymore. Because if I stayed silent, if I kept pretending, I wasn't the only one stuck in this. He was too. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as okay with that as I thought I'd be. I didn't plan to confront him. Seriously, I didn't. I told myself I'd wait, think it through, give it time, figure out what the hell I was even feeling before I did something stupid. But that lasted maybe an hour. Because once you know something like that, you can't unknow it. And pretending? Yeah. Turns out I'm not that good at it. Henry was sitting on the couch when I walked back into the living room. Laptop open. One leg stretched out. Completely relaxed. Like he hadn't just been in his room 5 minutes ago, talking about how he might confess his feelings to me. I stood there for a second, just looking at him, trying to see him the way I always had. My best friend. My roommate. Just Henry. But it didn't work anymore. Because now I saw everything else too. The way his t-shirt clung slightly to his shoulders. The way his hair fell into his eyes when he focused. The way his lips pressed together when he was thinking. Things I had definitely noticed before. I just never let them mean anything. "Hey," he said, glancing up. "You're back." "Yeah," I replied. My voice sounded normal, which was honestly impressive, considering my brain felt like it was on fire. "How was class?" "Fine. A beat. Too short. Too stiff." Henry narrowed his eyes slightly, like he caught it. "You sure?" he asked. There it was again. That look. Like he was trying to read me. And suddenly, I couldn't stand it. "Can we talk?" I said. Straight out. No build-up. His expression changed instantly. Not panic, but alert. Yeah," he said slowly, closing his laptop. "What's up?" I hesitated. And for a second, I almost backed out. Almost laughed it off. Made up some random excuse. But then I remembered what he said. I don't think I can keep this to myself much longer. And something in my chest tightened. "No," I said, shaking my head slightly. "I mean, like actually talk." Now he was definitely confused. "Okay," he said, sitting up a little straighter. "You're kind of scaring me." "Good," I muttered under my breath. "What?" "Nothing." I ran a hand through my hair. pacing once across the room before stopping in front of him again. Just say it. Just get it over with. I heard you last night. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Henry didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't even breathe, I think. What? He said finally, but it came out too quiet. Too careful. In the kitchen, I continued, forcing the words out before I could second-guess them. You were on the phone. His face went still. Not confused anymore. Not unsure. He knew. You said my name, I added. And that was it. That was the moment everything shifted. Because I watched it happen in real time. The realization. The panic. The way his entire body tensed like he'd just been caught doing something he could never take back. Easton, he started. But his voice cracked slightly. I swallowed hard. You said you were in love with me. There it was. Out in the open. No taking it back now. Henry stood up so fast the couch creaked behind him. Okay, he said quickly, running a hand through his hair. Okay, listen. No. I cut him off. Don't try to spin it or whatever. I heard you. I'm not, he stopped himself, exhaling sharply. I'm not trying to spin anything. Then what? I asked. My heart was pounding so hard it almost hurt. Were you just never gonna tell me? That hit him. I could see it. His jaw tightened. His eyes dropped for a second before coming back to me. I didn't want to, he admitted quietly. Why? A bitter laugh slipped out of him. Seriously. I held his gaze. Yes, seriously. He shook his head, like he couldn't believe I was asking that. Because this, he gestured vaguely between us, frustration creeping into his voice. This is the one thing I didn't want to ruin. Something in my chest twisted. You think this ruins it? I asked. I don't know, he shot back. Does it? The question hung there, sharp, unavoidable. And the worst part? I didn't have an answer, because I didn't know. I didn't know what this was supposed to mean. I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't know if things were already ruined, or if they were just changing into something I didn't understand yet. Henry ran a hand over his face, his voice dropping again. I didn't expect you to find out like that. Yeah, I said quietly. Me neither. Another silence. But this one felt different. Less explosive. More real. Like we were both standing in something we couldn't ignore anymore. I meant what I said, he added after a moment. My stomach tightened. I figured. No, I mean it, he insisted, stepping closer now. I wasn't drunk or confused or whatever excuse would make this easier. I felt this way for a while. I didn't move, didn't step back, even though every instinct in my body was screaming at me to do something. Why didn't you tell me? I asked again, quieter this time. Henry let out a breath. Because I didn't think you felt the same. That hit harder than I expected. And if I don't? I asked. His expression flickered. Pain. Quick, but there. Then nothing changes, he said. Even though we both knew that wasn't true. We just forget this happened. Forget? Yeah, right. Like that was even possible. I looked at him, really looked this time, and suddenly, everything felt too close, too intense, too real, because this wasn't just some abstract situation anymore. This was Henry, standing right in front of me, looking at me like I mattered in a way I hadn't fully understood until now. And the scariest part? I didn't want him to look away. I don't know what I feel, I admitted. It was the most honest thing I could say. Henry nodded slowly. Okay. But I know one thing, I added. His eyes flicked back up to mine. What? I hesitated. Just for a second. Then, I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. Something shifted in his expression. Subtle. But there. Like hope. Careful. Fragile. Yeah? He asked quietly. I nodded. Yeah. And that should have made things clearer. Simpler. Easier. But instead, it just made everything more complicated. Because now there was no going back. And whatever this was, it was only just beginning. After that conversation, things didn't magically get better. If anything, they got worse. Not in a dramatic way. No yelling, no slammed doors, no, we can't be friends anymore type of breakdown. Just tension. Constant. Quiet. Inescapable. We tried to act normal. That was the plan anyway. Henry went back to his laptop. I went back to my room. And for a couple hours, we pretended like we hadn't just changed everything between us. But pretending only works when both people believe it. And we didn't. By the time evening rolled around, I couldn't take it anymore. Sitting alone in my room, replaying everything, overanalyzing every word, every look, it was exhausting. So I did the one thing I probably shouldn't have done. I went back out there. Henry was in the kitchen this time, leaning against the counter, scrolling on his phone. He looked up the second he heard me, like he'd been waiting. "Hey," he said. "Hey." There it was again. That weird, careful tone, like we were both walking on glass. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, more for something to do than because I was actually thirsty. "You've been quiet," he added. I let out a short breath. "So have you." "Yeah, well," he shrugged slightly. "Didn't want to make things worse." That word again. Worse. I turned to face him. "Is this worse?" He hesitated. And that hesitation said everything. "I don't know," he admitted. Honest. At least he was being honest. I leaned back against the counter across from him, mirroring his position without even thinking about it. There was a few feet between us. But it didn't feel like enough. Or maybe it felt like too much. "I keep thinking about what you said," I admitted. Henry's grip tightened slightly around his phone. Yeah. A pause. Then, "About being in love with me." There. Said it again. Out loud. It didn't feel any less intense the second time. Henry looked at me, really looked this time. No hiding. No pretending. "Okay," he said quietly. I swallowed. "I don't get it." That made his brow furrow slightly. "What don't you get?" "Why me?" I asked. Simple question. Complicated answer. He let out a breath like he'd expected that. "I don't know," he said at first. I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "No," he corrected himself, shaking his head. "I mean, I do know. It's just hard to explain without sounding like an idiot." I almost smiled. Almost. "Try." He looked down for a second, gathering his thoughts. Then back at me. "It wasn't one thing," he said. "It was a lot of small things." I stayed quiet. Let him talk. "The way you always check if I've eaten when I forget," he continued. "The way you stay up with me even when you're exhausted." Just because I said I didn't feel like being alone. My chest tightened. "You remember stupid stuff I say," he added. "Like, really stupid stuff." "Hey," I muttered. "Not that stupid." He huffed out a quiet laugh. But it faded quickly. "And the way you look at me sometimes," he said more softly. That made my stomach flip. "What way?" I asked before I could stop myself. Henry held my gaze. "Like I matter." Silence. Heavy. Thick. Because I didn't know what to say to that. Did he matter to me? Yeah. Obviously. But hearing him say it like that, it hit differently. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he added quickly. "It just did." I nodded slowly, trying to process, trying to breathe normally. "And now?" I asked. His expression shifted slightly, more serious. "Now I'm standing here, hoping I didn't just lose the most important person in my life." That landed deep, too deep, because I felt it, that weight, that fear. And suddenly, this wasn't just about confusion or curiosity anymore. It was about something real, something fragile, something that could actually break. "I'm still here," I said quietly. Henry's eyes searched mine. "Yeah," he said. "But are you the same?" I didn't answer right away, because I couldn't, because he was right. Things weren't the same. Not anymore. The air between us shifted again. But this time, it wasn't just tension. It was something else. Something heavier. More charged. Like we were both aware of every inch of space between us. Every movement. Every breath. "I need to ask you something," Henry said suddenly. My pulse picked up. "Okay." He hesitated. And that hesitation told me exactly how important the question was. "Have you ever he started, then stopped. I waited. Have you ever thought about me like that? There it was. The question I knew was coming. The one I'd been avoiding in my own head all day. And now, I had to answer it. Out loud. To him. I exhaled slowly. I don't know, I said honestly. Henry's expression flickered. Not disappointment. Not yet. Just waiting. I mean it, I continued. I've never really let myself think about it. Why not? Because I didn't have to, I said. You were just you. That sounded stupid. But it was true. He wasn't a possibility in my head. He was just part of my life. Constant. Familiar. Safe. But now, he asked quietly. I looked at him. Really looked. And yet, now it was different. Now I noticed things I hadn't before. Now I felt things I didn't fully understand. Now I was standing way too close to him without remembering how I got there. I don't know what this is yet, I admitted. My voice came out lower than I expected. But it's not nothing. That was enough. I saw it in his face. The way something softened. The way his shoulders relaxed just slightly. Like that answer uncertain as it was meant more than a clear rejection ever could. Okay, he said, quiet, careful, but hopeful. And for some reason, that made my heart race even more. Because now this wasn't just his feelings anymore. This was ours. And neither of us knew where it was going. And then, without thinking, I stepped closer. Just a little. Close enough that I could see the shift in his breathing. Close enough that if I moved even slightly, things would cross a line neither of us could uncross. Easton, he said softly. Not a warning. Not exactly. More like a question. I didn't answer. Because I didn't trust myself to. Because something in my chest was pulling me forward, and I wasn't sure I wanted to stop it. I don't know who moved first. I've replayed that moment in my head more times than I can count, trying to figure it out, trying to pinpoint the exact second everything crossed the line. But the truth is, it didn't feel like a decision. It felt like something we both stepped into without saying it out loud. I was standing too close to him. That much I knew. Close enough to notice the way his chest rose a little faster than before. Close enough to feel the warmth coming off his skin. Close enough that if either of us shifted even slightly, there'd be no pretending after that. Easton, he said again, quieter this time, still not stopping me, still not moving away, just giving me a chance to. I didn't take it. Instead, I tilted my head slightly, studying his face like I was seeing it for the first time. And maybe I was, because now I wasn't just looking at my best friend. I was looking at the guy who stayed up late just to keep me company. The guy who noticed when I was off before anyone else did. The guy who had been quietly, stupidly, bravely in love with me, without expecting anything back. My chest tightened. You said you didn't want to ruin this, I said quietly. Henry swallowed. Yeah. But what if? I hesitated, my voice dropping. What if this isn't ruining it? His eyes flickered between mine, searching. Easton. I mean it. I cut in softer now. What if it's just changing it? Silence. But not empty. Heavy. Alive. And then, his hand moved. Slow. Careful. Like he was giving me time to pull away. His fingers brushed against my wrist. Barely there. But it was enough. Enough to send a sharp, unexpected jolt through my chest. I didn't pull away. And I think that was all the answer he needed. Are you sure? He asked quietly. That question should have made me stop. Should have grounded me. Made me step back and think. But instead, it did the opposite. Because the way he said it, like he was more worried about me than himself. Like even now, even in this moment, he was trying not to push me into something I didn't want. And that did something to me. I don't know, I admitted. Honest. Messy. Real. But I want to find out. His breath caught. Just slightly. But I noticed. I noticed everything now. And then I did it. I closed the distance. Not all at once. Not dramatic. Just enough. Enough that our shoulders brushed. Enough that I could feel the tension snap into something else entirely. Something heavier. something that made it impossible to ignore what was happening between us. Henry didn't move, didn't pull away, but his hand tightened slightly around my wrist, like he needed to anchor himself. "Easton," he murmured, but this time, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like he was holding on. I don't remember deciding to look at his lips, but I did, and once I noticed, I couldn't unnotice it. The way he pressed them together slightly when he was nervous. The way his breath hitched when I stepped closer. The way he wasn't saying anything anymore, just watching me, waiting, and suddenly, everything felt loud. My heartbeat, my breathing, the space between us shrinking by inches. "You can stop me," I said quietly, giving him an out, giving both of us an out. Henry's eyes flicked back up to mine, and for a second, I thought he might. I thought he'd take a step back, say something, break the moment before it went too far. But instead, he shook his head, barely. "No," he said, soft, certain. And that was it. The moment everything tipped. I leaned in first, slow enough that he could have stopped me, close enough that I could feel his breath against my skin before anything even happened. And then, everything went quiet, like the world just paused, because this wasn't some random moment. This wasn't impulsive in the way people think. It felt inevitable, like something that had been building for way longer than either of us wanted to admit. And now it was finally happening. When our lips met, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy. It was careful, like we were both trying to understand what this meant at the exact same time. His hand shifted from my wrist, fingers brushing up my arm, hesitant at first, then a little firmer, like he was grounding himself, like he needed to make sure this was real. I felt it, that spark, that shift, that something that made my chest feel tight in a way I couldn't explain. And without thinking, I leaned in just a little more. That's when it changed. Subtle, but undeniable, because suddenly it wasn't just curiosity anymore. It wasn't just figuring things out. It felt real, too real. Henry pulled back first. Not far, just enough that our foreheads almost touched. His breathing was uneven, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to figure out what just happened. "What are we doing?" he asked quietly. And for once, I didn't hesitate. "I don't know," I said. My voice came out low, steady. "But I don't want to stop." That was the truth, the part one couldn't ignore anymore. Because whatever this was, confusing, complicated, messy as hell, it didn't feel wrong, not even a little. And judging by the way Henry looked at me in that moment, he felt it too. But neither of us realized yet that this was just the beginning, and things were about to get a lot more complicated than either of us expected. After we kissed, nothing felt the same, and at the same time, everything felt too real. We didn't move right away. We just stood there way too close, breathing the same air, like both of us were trying to process what just happened. Henry was still looking at me like he didn't trust it, like if he blinked, I'd disappear or take it back. "You said you didn't want to stop," he said quietly. I nodded. I meant it. My voice didn't shake, which surprised me, because inside, everything was shifting, fast. He studied my face for a second longer, like he was searching for hesitation, regret, anything that would tell him this was a mistake. But I didn't pull away, didn't look away, and slowly, something in his expression changed. Not just hope this time, something deeper, something more certain. "Okay," he said, just that. But the way he said it, that wasn't small. And then, his hand moved again, this time not hesitant, not unsure. It slid from my arm to my side, fingers pressing lightly against my waist like he was testing if I'd react. I didn't. If anything, I stepped closer, just a little, and that was enough. The second kiss wasn't careful, not like the first one. It wasn't rushed either. It was just more, like we'd already crossed the line. So now there was nothing holding us back the same way. His hand tightened slightly at my side, pulling me closer. My fingers found the fabric of his shirt without me thinking about it. And suddenly, that space between us? Gone. Completely. It hit differently this time. Stronger. Heavier. Like whatever we were holding back before was finally catching up. And my brain, yeah, it stopped trying to analyze, stopped trying to label it. Because in that moment, I didn't care what this meant. I just knew I didn't want it to end. Henry pulled back again, but not far. His hand stayed where it was, like he wasn't ready to let go. "Tell me if this is too much," he said, his voice lower now. I shook my head immediately. "It's not." And that was the truth. If anything, it still felt like not enough. That realization hit me hard. Because it meant this wasn't just curiosity anymore. It wasn't just figuring things out. It was something I wanted. And that was new. "I didn't think this would actually happen," Henry admitted. There was something almost disbelieving in his voice. "Yeah." I huffed quietly. "Same." He let out a small breath of a laugh. But his eyes didn't leave mine. "Are you okay?" he asked. That question again. Always checking. Always making sure. And for the first time since all of this started, I didn't hesitate. "Yeah," I said. Then after a beat, "Are you?" He nodded. But it wasn't automatic. It was intentional. "Yeah," he said. He stopped. I frowned slightly. "What?" He exhaled. "I don't want this to disappear tomorrow." That landed. Harder than anything else so far. Because I knew what he meant. That fear that this was just a moment. A mistake. Something I'd wake up and regret. Something I'd pull away from once reality settled back in. I shook my head. "It's not going to." "You don't know that," he said quietly. "I do," I replied. And I meant it. Even if I didn't fully understand why yet. Because here's the thing no one really talks about. There's a difference between doing something impulsive and realizing something that was already there. And this felt like the second one. "I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen," I said. Henry watched me carefully, like he was measuring every word. "Okay," he said slowly. "But what does that mean?" "Fair question." I exhaled, glancing down for a second before looking back at him. "It means we don't go backwards." He went still. "And forward?" he asked. My heart picked up again. Because that part was still unknown. "I guess we figure that out," I said. Not a perfect answer. But it was honest. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just full. Like we were both standing at the edge of something neither of us had planned for. And deciding whether to step further in. Henry's hand was still on my side. Warm. Steady. And this time, I didn't ignore it. I let myself feel it. Fully. "Easton," he said softly. "Yeah. If this gets complicated." I smirked slightly. "When has anything with us not been?" He huffed a quiet laugh. "Fair." But then his expression shifted again. More serious. "I mean it." I nodded. "I know." And I did. This wasn't simple. This wasn't clean. There were 100 ways this could go wrong. But standing there, looking at him, feeling the way my chest tightened in a way that didn't feel like fear, I realized something. I didn't want simple. I wanted this. Whatever this was becoming. So instead of overthinking it again, instead of pulling back like I probably should have, I made a choice. I leaned in again. But this time, it wasn't hesitant. And it definitely wasn't accidental. And as Henry's grip tightened slightly, pulling me closer without hesitation, I realized something else. Something even more dangerous. This wasn't just changing our friendship. This was turning into something neither of us would be able to walk away from easily. And somehow, that didn't scare me anymore. If there was a moment where we could have stopped, that was it. Right before things went too far. Right before it stopped being something we could pretend was just figuring things out. But neither of us stepped back. The third time felt different. Not because it was more intense, but because it was more certain. There was no hesitation left. No checking, no second guessing. Just intention. And then, just as quickly as it built, Henry pulled back. Not abruptly. Not cold. Just enough to create space again. space that felt necessary. "We should slow down," he said quietly. That surprised me. I frowned slightly. "You're the one saying that?" A small, almost nervous smile tugged at his lips. "Yeah," he exhaled. "Because if we don't, this is going to get complicated fast." I let that sink in, because he wasn't wrong. Not even a little. This wasn't just two random people figuring things out. This was us. History, trust, routine, everything we'd built before this moment. And now we were standing right on the edge of changing all of it. "I don't want to mess this up," he added. That again. That fear. But this time, it didn't feel like something we needed to avoid. It felt like something we needed to be careful with. "You won't," I said. He raised an eyebrow. Confident. I shrugged slightly. "Not really. Just, I don't think this is something that breaks us." He studied me, like he was trying to decide if he believed that. "And if it does?" he asked. I stepped a little closer again. Not the same way as before. Not pulled by impulse. This time it was deliberate. Grounded. "Then we deal with it," I said. "Together." That word hung there. Between us. Henry let out a slow breath. And something in his shoulders finally relaxed. Like he'd been carrying that fear longer than I realized. "Okay," he said quietly. We didn't rush back into anything after that. That was the difference. Instead, we stayed there. Close but not overwhelming. Talking. Actually talking. "When did it start?" I asked after a while. He leaned back against the counter, thinking. "I don't know the exact moment," he admitted. "It just kind of crept up on me." "Helpful," I muttered. He smirked slightly. "I think it was the night you stayed up with me before my exam," he added. I frowned. "That was months ago." "Yeah," he said. "Exactly." I blinked. "Wait, you've been dealing with this for months?" "Pretty much." I let out a low whistle. "Damn." "Yeah," he huffed. "Damn." There was a pause. Then, "Did you ever think I might feel the same?" I asked. Henry shook his head immediately. "No. Not even a little?" "Easton," he said flatly. "You literally dated a girl last semester." "Okay, fair." We both laughed. And that felt normal. Familiar. Like us. And maybe that was the moment I realized something important. This didn't erase what we already had. Just added to it. "But now?" he asked after a second. I tilted my head. "Now what?" "Now that you know," he clarified. "Now that this happened." I thought about it. Really thought about it. Not just reacting. Not just following the moment. And yet, things were different. I couldn't pretend they weren't. But different didn't automatically mean bad. I think, I started slowly. "I think I want to see where this goes." Henry's expression shifted again. Careful. Hopeful. "You're sure?" "No," I said honestly. "But I'm not unsure either." He huffed a quiet laugh. "That makes zero sense." "I know." Another pause. Then, "Okay," he said again. But this time, it sounded stronger. And just like that, we had something. Not defined. Not labeled. But real. Later that night, we ended up on the couch. Not like before. Not just casually sitting side by side. There was awareness now. Of space. Of closeness. Of everything. Our arms brushed at one point. Neither of us moved away. And that tiny moment, that simple, almost nothing moment, somehow felt just as big as everything that came before it. Because this wasn't just about one night. Or one decision. This was the start of something that was going to unfold slowly. Messy. Real. And probably way more intense than either of us expected. And the craziest part? For the first time since all of this started, I wasn't confused anymore. I was just ready to find out what happens next. The next morning felt different. Not awkward. Not tense. Just quieter. I woke up before my alarm again. But this time, it wasn't because my mind was racing in a bad way. It was because everything felt settled. Not figured out. Not labeled. But real. For a few seconds, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. And then it hit me. Last night wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't something I regretted. It wasn't something I wanted to undo. It was something I wanted to continue. I sat up slowly, running a hand through my hair, exhaling. Okay, I muttered to myself. So this is happening. And weirdly, that didn't scare me anymore. When I stepped into the kitchen, Henry was already there. Again, like always, but this time, the second he looked up at me, something shifted. Not shock, not panic, just awareness. Morning, he said. Morning. A small pause, and then a smile. Not forced, not awkward, just there. How'd you sleep? He asked. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. Better than yesterday, I said. He huffed a quiet laugh. Yeah, same. There was still something unspoken between us, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. Felt understood. So, I said after a second. Henry raised an eyebrow slightly. So, I hesitated. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to say it right. What are we doing? I asked. Simple, direct, but not loaded with fear this time. Just honest. Henry didn't answer immediately. He set his mug down, turning fully toward me. Thinking. I think, he started slowly. We're figuring it out. I tilted my head. That's your big answer? He smirked slightly. You want a better one? Yeah, actually. He stepped a little closer. Not too close. Just enough. I think I still care about you the same way I did before, he said. My chest tightened slightly. But now, there's more to it. I held his gaze. More how? He hesitated. Then, I don't want to pretend I don't want you anymore. That landed. Not heavy. Not overwhelming. Just clear. And for the first time, I didn't overthink it. Good, I said. Henry blinked. Good, I nodded. Because I don't want you to pretend either. Something in his expression softened. Deeply. And you? He asked. What about me? What do you want? That question, that was the one that mattered. Not what we were. Not what this meant long term. Just, what did I want? I took a breath and answered honestly. I want to see where this goes, I said. His eyes searched mine, making sure. Even if it gets messy? I smiled slightly. It's us. It's going to get messy. He laughed. Soft. Real. Yeah, he said. That's fair. There was a pause. But this one felt calm. Like we weren't standing on the edge anymore. Like we'd already stepped forward. And then, without overthinking it, I reached out. Just enough to brush my fingers against his. He didn't pull away. Instead, his hand turned slightly, fitting against mine. Natural. Easy. Like it had always been meant to happen this way. No rush. No pressure. No need to define everything immediately. Just us. Starting something new. And for once, I wasn't wondering if it was a mistake. Because the way he looked at me, the way I felt standing there, it didn't feel like something that would fall apart. It felt like something that had been there all along, just waiting for us to finally notice it.